of an inspiring moment for me at the moment, but it came to mind when I was looking at this psalm this morning, Psalm 48, and it really kind of gives you, in some ways, a tour of Jerusalem. When the psalmist says, "Walk about Zion, go around her, number her towers, consider well her ramparts, go through her citadels." But then it says this, that you may tell the next generation that this is God, our God, forever and ever. He will guide us forever. I guess it just struck me because obviously they were likening the fact that this, the city of Jerusalem, and all that you see is really a representation of God. And when you look at it, obviously with this amazing wall that goes all around it, of course it's been rebuilt and stuff, but you really see that for the people of Israel, not only recognizing that the very presence of God there in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, but knowing that the city itself stood for strength, its majesty, and all the things that go with that. Safety, protection, all the things that we know God to be really kind of make sense when he says, look at all of this because this is God. Every once in a while I see people inviting their friends up to Grace Baptist and for the first time, and they're showing them around the church and looking at various things. And so I couldn't help but wonder to myself, what do they see of God here at church? But at the same time, what struck me, especially this morning, because I was sitting in a group of pastors from all over the valley who gathered down at the hospital for a breakfast, and sitting next to the senior pastor of Bethlehem Lutheran that used to do the drive through the star or whatever you do, and they don't do it anymore. But he saw that I went to Grace Baptist. He said, "Man, I love what you guys did with your patio." So obviously he came up here, took a tour, and really kind of enjoyed that whole thing. But I guess what strikes me is the idea of the end phrase of this whole thing, catching that vision that God can be represented in a lot of different things. But more importantly, what he ends with is, this is God forever and ever. He will guide us forever. And so I got kind of struck again with the sense of where God's leadership really takes root in my life. What is it that I see of God's leadership in my life? Much like you could look at a city like Jerusalem and kind of see the presence of God and all that it could represent in our lives. And I came to the conclusion as I was just meditating on it that I just have yet to grasp the fullness of God's leadership in my life. That he is there as much as this word says he is there all the time. And he's constantly guiding. And I just go, Pastor Peter, one day maybe you'll get it, but I'm not there yet. You can keep praying for me. I get up in the morning, I thank God for my life, I thank God for the life he lives in me. I commit my way to him, I tell him I'm going to follow. And I think that's a right thing. I mean, Isaiah proclaimed the idea of saying, the Lord will guide you continually. This is Isaiah 58:11. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire in scorched places and make your bones strong. My wife needs that one. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. I mean, there's health in that. There's rejuvenating strength in that, just as God leads us along. We want that faith. I think it's the very reason why Psalm 23 is such a favorite psalm of people. Because when we recognize the hopelessness of life in ourselves, when we recognize the wandering that we do in life just because we are sinful, we recognize we need somebody to lead us. We do, and it better be God. Because the enemy's ready to lead us if we're ready to follow. And so whether or not he leads us to lie down in green pastures, which sheep won't do if they're fearful, they won't do if they're infected or if there's turmoil within them, or lead us to not be anxious, to come to still waters and be refreshed in who he is. He leads us to do the right thing in paths of righteousness. He even leads us through the valley of the shadow of death. And every single time, he promises that he's going to be with us. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death, right? I'll fear no evil because thou art with me. So it's that sense of God's leadership that as I kind of just sat thinking about this morning, feel like I still need to grasp. I still need to recognize no matter what's going on in my day, God is leading me. He's there. He's constantly leading me, trying to do something there. And I don't think anyone really grasps what it means to be led continually as much as somebody who's blind does. Somebody who is dependent upon somebody else to take their hand and lead them, whether it's a human being or a faithful dog. You know, blind people are being led all the time. They don't have any problem grasping their total reliance and the trust they have to have in somebody else, do they? They're well aware of kind of the stumbling through life and the uncertainty of what's going on because they can't see it. And that's what makes, as I came to it, and the reason why I passed out this Great Hymns of the Faith series for you to just kind of read something tonight. Because it reminded me of the hymn, All the Way My Savior Leads Me. I don't know if you've ever sung that. Some of you have. But what makes it more powerful is that the title, All the Way My Savior Leads Me, is written by a blind woman. Who better to grasp what it means to have God lead her than Fanny Crosby? And that the story behind it really is that, and this is probably in 1860, something around there, about the same time as our Civil War. She was in desperate need of $5. This is the way history has been recorded. I don't know what that meant, but back in 1860, $5 was a lot of money. And she was desperately in need, and so she prayed. And that same day, a man showed up at her door with $5 to give her. And she is recorded as saying this, I have no way of accounting for this except to believe that God put it into the heart of this man to bring the money. So my first thought was that it's a wonderful thing the way the Lord leads me. And she sat down that day, wrote this hymn, and gave it to somebody to write the music to, and we have All the Way My Savior Leads Me. But it was really kind of overcoming to me to recognize a blind woman would understand somebody leading her more fully than I would. And maybe when you start thinking about was blind but now I see, sometimes maybe it's really grasping our blindness that helps us even more. That we really spiritually are grasping at life any way we can, trying to make sense of it, trying to endure it, trying to stand in it and be courageous in it. And it strikes me that I wonder how many doors the Lord has led me to in life and opened and allowed me to walk through without me ever realizing it. And then he stood back and let me walk through that door, but he didn't stay there, he followed me. Because as the writer David finished, surely goodness and mercy will what? Follow me all the days of my life. I'm not sure when it is that God then comes from behind and takes the lead again to open the next door. But I am secure in what his promise is, that he will guide me forever, that process goes throughout my life until the day that he finally opens that final door and allows me to walk through it, and then follows me right through in the same goodness and the same mercy, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So my reason of saying all this is not just an introduction to what we're going to sing here, as much as it is why we're going to sing it. Because my hope is that, one, you understand who wrote the song and why. And two, that you understand that my sense of God's leadership is still woefully inadequate, and I want it to be better. I want to start believing every day that He is taking control of my life, and He is leading me. He's opening doors. He's allowing me to walk through them. He's following me for a moment, and then somehow He gets in front again and He goes. And I want to be sure that when those moments of walking through happen, that I'm ready to allow Him to get in front of me again and go, rather than go off on my own. Because I really do feel that sometimes our personal resourcefulness, sometimes our own self-determination or our pride, or even feelings of isolation, like we're all alone in this, nobody cares, nobody knows, nobody wants to know, are the very things that blind us from the fact that, no, God's sitting there going, I know, I care, I'm here, I'm leading, just follow, trust me, follow. Give me your day, give me your life, give me all that you will, and I will follow, I will lead you. So why don't you take this great Hymns of the Faith series out, and the middle one in the collection is this very psalm.